Hello, Purnima. Thank you so much for joining the internal communications series that I run on my blog. As you know, this is a long-standing series, and I talk to thought leaders about internal communications, how it's practiced, what are their perspectives. So this is really meant for students, practitioners, academicians. So the blog which I've been writing has been around since 2006. So thank you again for taking the time. So before we get started, it'll be great if you could quickly introduce yourself for our audience.
Thank you so much, Aniso, and I'm delighted to be part of your blog. My name is Purnima Sahni Mohanty. I lead communications for Microsoft India. Over the past 28 years, I have led the communications and CSR functions across several renowned science and technology companies.
Fantastic. Great. So let's dive in straight away to the first question as to what is your understanding or what's your definition of internal communications?
So, internal communications is an integral part of the overall communications mandate. Internal communications has the primary charter of connecting employees within an organization. And that's really done through focusing on sharing the organizational vision, values, and building culture. Leadership, as you can imagine, has a crucial role to play in this area by rallying teams towards common goals, just practicing the values of the organization and emphasizing building the culture. More engaged employees, the more truly engaged they are, companies report improved employee retention, higher customer satisfaction, growing sales metrics, and just overall healthy growth.
Great, great. And how does it get practiced in your organization? Because I know your organization is in the forefront of a lot of the collaboration platforms, which currently are the mainstay of internal comms.
At Microsoft, we truly believe our employees can be our brand ambassadors. And the cadence of communications that we have is very regular, and we focus on, the communications that we have are aligned to our mission. That's really important that all our communications align to our mission, and we outline them based on business priorities, people development, culture communications. It's really a combination of all of these that form the content that we create as we develop our employee communications.
Right.
We also invest significant time and energy in listening to our employees. There are listening sessions, there are feedback sessions on topics that are relevant to us as a function and on topics that are top of mind for our teams. That I think is extremely important, the two-way communication, really listening to what employees' perspectives are, because that really informs our communication strategy as well.
Right.
I would also like to add that collaboration is the foundation of engaging employees. Because when employees work together, teams work together, it accelerates learning, problem solving, and that in turn enhances the decision making and responsiveness. And as I said before, when employees are more engaged, there is just they have the desire and willingness to lean in more. They will want to go the extra mile, rather than just limiting themselves to the roles that they have been given to fulfill. There is a zeal to succeed in the mission.
Interesting. I like the point about being a brand ambassador and the fact that you're listening to them, which not many organizations do practice that quite actively. So if you could give me an example, or a campaign that you worked on, which you're personally really proud of, and what is the impact and the value that it added?
That's a great question, Aniso. And let me share a recent example. So, the pandemic in the last few months, most employees are working from home, right? And as they're working from home, they're working longer hours and managing personal and family needs at the same time. At Microsoft, prioritizing employee well-being is fundamental to our people-first approach. And we recently launched an employee campaign that focuses on mental health and well-being.
Right.
This campaign is really centered on destigmatizing mental health issues. Really bringing them out in the open, really creating an environment that makes it comfortable for employees to talk about them, to share, in different capacities. And we have several resources to support employees and really actively emphasize the significance of mental well-being. So in essence, it's about encouraging our employees to take care of themselves first, their families, their friends, your own networks. Really take care of themselves as we all navigate these very unusual times.
Fantastic. So if I were to ask you, what's the biggest challenge that you see for internal communicators in terms of managing the function?
So we live in an age of information overload every day,
Right.
right? And as we plan our internal communication strategy and execute on our communications plans for our employee audience, our constant endeavor is twofold. One, to ensure that our messages are simple and consistent.
Right.
And two, to be thoughtful on the frequency of outreach. So the objective here is to engage and inform and to really see that there is a strong recall value for our communications and the messaging that we are sharing with our teams.
Right. Fantastic. That's great. I like the fact that you're talking about recall value. Is there a way in which you measure how internal comms is done?
We do. In fact, that's a very important part of our employee communications plans and strategy. And we have pulsing sessions. We have employee surveys that we regularly roll out. And so these are more, formal structures that we have in place. But in addition to this, as I mentioned earlier, we have several feedback sessions. So feedback sessions that are done by leadership, and feedback sessions that we as the communications team. So various measurement mechanisms.
Fantastic. And what do you think is the biggest opportunity for internal communicators?
So internal communications plays a very important role in shaping organizational culture. I think that to me is a really it's such an enriching opportunity, right, to shape culture of an organization, and so many various elements go into that.
Yeah.
So in my mind, internal communications offers an excellent opportunity to create brand ambassadors through impactful employee communications and employee engagement.
That's great. And so there is always this discussion that internal communicators don't get a seat at the table. How can they add more value? So what's your take on that in terms of what can internal communicators do more, and how can they build that executive presence?
That's an extremely important aspect that you just raised, Anisu, and I think that's something as communicators we are having conversations around this quite frequently, right? I believe that internal communicators, uh, because of the role that they perform, they have unique insights. They have unique insights on employee sentiment, employee perspectives, on topics that could be really wide-ranging and extremely important for the company at large, right? And the insights that they bring could be really very valuable for both the business and the evolution of the organization. Because there's just so much richness and so much value that could come from the insights that you get from engaging into employees.
Got it. Got it. And what, according to you, are some of the key skills that internal communicators need to have? And it's like very, very crucial. So what are those key crucial skills?
Yes, let me highlight a few skills here. So I think strong interpersonal skills is kind of key. Right, because this is about working with people, working with leadership. You're kind of really interacting with so many different teams across the organization. So strong interpersonal skills is paramount importance. That's one. And then what I would highlight is the listening skills, the ability to listen carefully, to
Yeah.
understand, and listen to understand. That's so important, right? Not
Yeah.
listen so much to respond, but listen to understand. And there's a delicate nuance there,
Right.
extremely important. Listen to understand and distill diverse points of view. That's what it's all about, really, right? As you do the pulsing sessions, as you do listening and feedback sessions, you're really trying to understand different perspectives, different points of view, and how employees are really perceiving the brand, are perceiving trends in society, and so on and so forth, right? So I think really listening and distilling points of view, and then finally a creative and learning mindset.
Mm.
Because I do believe that this part of the communications function provides a lot of opportunity for creativity.
Fantastic. Yeah, these are great
These,
skills.
yeah, so I think these would really set up for success.
Fantastic. And on that point, I wanted to ask you, there are a lot of people who want to join, this exciting domain of internal communication. So what's your advice for them to make a mark and make a mark in this career?
I definitely would encourage them. I think internal communications offers an excellent career opportunity.
Mm,
It really offers an excellent career opportunity for those that have the aptitude
mm,
and the desire to grow in this area. It really presents a broad spectrum of many different points to engage with both leadership as
right.
well as employees at large across the organization. So I think it's just an excellent opportunity.
Mm, great. And on a related note, I also ask women leaders as to what should women do differently or think differently about making a mark. I know it should be gender neutral, but what's your perspective on it?
So my advice is gender neutral, Anisu. I think employees are so key to organizational reputation and growth. And engaging talent today is
Mm,
so much more critical than ever before.
mm,
Right. So I think coming back again to the point I made earlier, that internal communications, to my mind, really offers an exciting opportunity to really to build an enriching career.
mm, mm. Fantastic. So I think in the beginning you alluded to COVID-19 and the campaign and the wellness part of it. But I want to ask you what has fundamentally changed or what has fundamentally stayed the same because of COVID-19 when it comes to internal communication. So what's your thought on that?
Yes, so the pandemic, I think, has posed unprecedented challenges,
Mm,
right? And particularly for communications, for the communications fraternity at large, professionals leading communications across organizations have been thinking very differently,
mm,
particularly internal communications, because that's all about engaging employees, and
right.
most employees are working from home.
Mm,
So let me share perspective on a few aspects that we've been working on. So one is really given that most employees are working virtually, we've built in a lot more flexibility.
right.
So that employees are able to take care of both professional and personal priorities.
Right.
The other thing that we are very mindful of is that each individual situation and circumstances are different.
Mm,
And therefore, we are adopting a much more empathetic and inclusive approach.
mm,
And that's reflected in our communications.
okay.
And finally, what I would want to highlight is that during any crisis,
Mm,
the role of leadership
mm,
becomes center stage,
right.
right?
Right.
And leaders have to provide clarity
Mm.
and reassure and support employees as they navigate any difficult situation or crisis.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great point. And I like the fact that you talked about personalization because everyone is unique and you need to fine tune your communication and think about them as individuals and not as a group. So that's a great point you called out. So what, according to you, I mean, if you are spotting what's one trend that you spot in internal communications?
So I think internal communications is gaining strategic importance uh,
Mm,
over the last few years, I would say, and I think the pandemic has really accelerated that trend.
right.
Um, right, and we have seen over the last few months organizations and businesses and a varying scale and size. All
Mm,
of them, the one trend that I have been noticing is that there is a lot more attention, a lot more engagement that is happening with employees. With most people working remotely, there is a concern, there is a care for the safety and well-being of teams, and
mm,
that, to my mind, is a really positive trend.
mm.
And what I would really like to say is that as we move to the next normal, I definitely hope that this trend would continue to strengthen.
Fantastic. And as we wrap up, Purnima, I just want to ask you if there was, I mean, looking back on your career and looking back at some of the work that you've done, is there, if there's one thing you'd like to change about internal communication, what would that be?
So I don't think I would want to change anything really, Anisu, but what I would say is that forward, what we, as I think about internal communications and how it's evolving, I would say I would like to call out two areas that I think will become we will need to focus more on these two areas. One is going to be listening.
Right.
At Microsoft, we already do that. As I said, we spend a lot of time and energy on that, but I think we will need to do more of that, right? I'm speaking more as for the fraternity. I think brands in general will need to spend much more time listening to employees, right, and being more inclusive, being more empathetic.
Right.
And the other thing is the other aspect that I want to mention is that of creativity. I think the virtual environment has really highlighted the need to be more creative, the need to create, the need to really build engagement in different ways,
Great.
right? So both as teams and as one-on-one with colleagues. So I think these are the two areas that we will just need to spend more time thinking about and will evolve as we move forward.
Great. These are fantastic responses. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview, and I'm sure this will be well received by the audience.
Thank you so much, Anisu. It's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.